Okay, we'll continue on The Paradox of Happiness by Renee Bruel, Finding True Joy in a World of Counterfeits. Again, this lecture is not original with me. It's from Renee Bruel's book, The Paradox of Happiness. If you get an opportunity, you should read the book. Okay, so part 2, Jesus' Paradoxical Alternative. Chapter 4, The Gift of Happiness. And this is the second part of Chapter 4, The Gift of Happiness. The elusive search for happiness, we looked at. The indirectness of happiness. So if you're searching, it's elusive. If you don't search, if it's an indirect, it's doing something else, you may find happiness. Finding happiness by forgetting about it. And what is true of moments is true of lifetime. So what we're saying is, if you're not pressing on for happiness, but rather you forget about it, you're doing other things, those moments of happiness come. But what's true of moments is also true of a lifetime. Those are happy who make their minds fixed on some other object or some objects other than happiness. We sit around and ask ourselves why we're not happy, and we search for it. But the answer actually is to fix our minds on another object, something else. So on the happiness of others would be one. On the improvement of mankind, even on some sort of art or pursuit, something that's enjoyable, followed not as a means, but as itself an ideal end. In other words, these three things are the reason we're doing them. We desire to make other people happy. We desire to improve life for mankind. We desire to look into some art or some type of enjoyment just for itself. But what we'll find, if those things are really worthy, we'll become happy because of them, but not if we're using them as a means to become happy. And this was written in the 19th century by John Stuart Mill. Aiming thus at something else, they find happiness by the way. So we're not being self-centered. We're not looking for our own happiness. We're looking into other things. In a paradoxical way, happiness becomes real when we don't make it a direct end. In other words, when we are not searching for it. And I think if we asked ourselves, how many of us constantly come back to this theme of happiness? Oh, I'm not happy. I'm sad. I don't like the way things are going, right? We're always coming back because we're searching for happiness. And that's being self-centered, and happiness will never be found in that way. We are used to having other goals be the means to the end of happiness. Pursuing things like a challenging job, or a welcoming home, or some vibrant spirituality for the sake of the fulfillment they will bring. In other words, we have a challenging job hoping it makes us happy. We have a big welcoming home hoping it makes everybody happy. We work on our spirituality hoping it makes us happy. Okay. So in reality, even though we're doing these things, the reason for doing them is self-centered. We want to be happy. And what we're learning here is when we do things for the sake of happiness, happiness never arrives. But the paradox of happiness demands that we escape this logic. We need to leave that thinking behind and renew our thinking. Renew the way that we search for a life of value, a fulfilled life, a life lived for God, and treat these goals as things to be enjoyed precisely for what they are. Not to bring us happiness, but for what they are. Thus, by discovering an interest we can pursue wholeheartedly, we will incidentally bring happiness in its wake. Now, we have to understand what it's saying here. Okay? We're looking for interest, and if we look at the Word of God, we would say we're looking to walk with God, walk in obedience, right? Knowing God better, knowing God's people better, developing relationships. When we do those things for the sake of those things, we'll see that happiness will be found in its wake. But if we're doing those things to be happy, that happiness won't come because it's a self-centered doing. The doing has to be for God. It has to be for others. It can't rest on ourselves. So self-forgetfulness will permit us to be wholly immersed in an activity or fully attentive in a conversation so that we lose track of time amidst what? Enjoyment, and feel spent, given, and connected. And so it's living in others, giving of ourselves to others. It's not directed towards bringing us happiness. Viktor Frankl was a neurologist who lived through the Nazi concentration camps, and he observed that this indirect nature is a property not only of happiness, it's a property of a number of other things. For Frankl, the dynamic of consequence can be observed also in other goals we pursue. So, a similar phenomena, Frankl noted that success occurs according to the same logic. Same logic as happiness, followed by happiness. That same logic that we're looking at how to obtain happiness is the way we have success. It's a byproduct of focusing and working on other things other than success itself. If you do what you do to be successful, you're never going to enjoy life. Success will never come. But if we enjoy what we do and we put ourselves into it, then that in and of itself will actually bring success. And it comes because, again, we're not self-centered. We're not doing it to bring something to ourselves, but rather to move forward to whether it be in a job or an art or something of that idea. It's doing it for the sake of doing it and helping others, right? So in man's search for meaning, he writes, for success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue or be a result of something that we do. And it only does so as unintended side effect. In other words, if we're doing it so we become happy or so we become successful, then it's not going to work. It has to be an unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as a byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. So the work that we do is a greater work than ourselves. So we're putting everything into it, we're working hard, we're affecting people, we're having a good relationship with the people, and all of this will bring success. But if we're doing it to bring success, it won't work because we become very self-centered then. Right? And the same thing is true of happiness. You will see that in the long run, and he repeats himself, in the long run I say, success will follow you precisely because you had forgotten to think of it. That wasn't the reason you do it. If you love your work, right, and you enjoy doing it and you work hard at it and you are able to help other people because of it, then there will be success. But it's not success because we were searching for it, right? It's success because we love what we do. In this way, Frankl stresses that success must be forgotten before it can be achieved. So it's not the goal. Success is not the goal. It's the byproduct. It comes because we haven't been thinking about it. Because when you think of yourself and you desire to be a successful person, then you're becoming self-centered. You're doing it for yourself. And one never becomes happy when one does something for themselves. They think they will, but in the end, there will not be happiness, nor will there be true success. It must escape our mental horizon before it can greet us in reality. It must escape so we're not thinking about it, right? Our mental horizon, it's just always there, always there. And what he says, it won't become a reality if it's in the mental horizon. I remember talking to my father about the culture here where somebody who makes it does well, becomes very successful in his business, often keeps his home that he originally had in the province, and he'll go there and he wants to be around those people and he wants to help them and he wants them to celebrate in his success, right? And that's what makes him successful, because he can share it, and he has people from the neighborhood coming into his yard and into his house, and he's good friends with them, and he's able to help them and encourage them, which is the idea of what we do for others, not just for ourselves. When we do it for ourselves, it will never appear. Don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you're going to miss it. Right? You aim at the target, you will miss the target. Happiness must happen, and the same holds for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it, by not making it the goal of your life, but rather moving forward and enjoying life itself. An obstacle to this humbler and more realistic enjoyment of life is that we have inflated the notion of happiness. It's amazing how often on the radio, the TV, you always see this idea of people being happy doing certain things, and we have the right to be happy, and so it's really inflated, and we think that's what we need to shoot for. If we have pushed aside ideals like God and goodness and love, at least in a pragmatic, unreflective way, we may not even realize we're doing it because we're looking for happiness and have placed happiness at the throne of human purpose, then we'll never find it. In short, the pursuit of happiness has become a distraction. It's a distraction. It's a wrong turning. It's a mistake. Don't search for happiness. Perhaps it was never the real issue, writes a philosopher. As an ideal, mere contentment cannot sustain the full weight of human dignity, complexity, and splendor. In other words, the ideal of happiness, it can never meet our needs. It is not the overarching purpose of life. We were not created to be happy, to be self-centered. All right? Happiness is a more modest thing. It is a crowning delight of lives properly lived. If we live correctly, if we walk with God, if we desire to allow Him to use us, the byproducts will be happiness. As an award lollipop given for the children who have played well. Happiness cannot be found directly. Don't look for it. It is not something to be grasped by self-serving efforts, because it is a byproduct of significant endeavors and relationships. Doing things for others and having correct relationships with them. In the words of Stuart Mill, the only chance is to treat not happiness, but some end external to it as the purpose of life. There needs to be something else. And Ecclesiastes ends with the fear of God, the living for God, the allowing God to have control of our lives. That will bring happiness. But we don't do that for the happiness of, otherwise it becomes self-centered and it doesn't work. Individual happiness does not exist for its own sake, okay, as what gives meaning to life. Happiness doesn't give meaning to life. It is a property of meaningful lives. When we live a certain way, then it results in happiness, because we're not being self-centered, we're helping others. And if there isn't meaning or life, there is no happiness. It won't originate itself. It is a byproduct. It comes because of our desire to walk with God and to encourage and help one another. But when we take the momentous step of courage, when we move out of self-centeredness and dare to give up our personal happiness, that's when the great surprise can arrive unannounced. Okay? No more move out of self-centeredness, me being in the center, and give up our personal happiness. Right? Happiness knocks on our door when we move away from it, when we're no longer looking for it. It comes to those who are not looking for it. It finds us when we least expect, when in self-forgetfulness we are encouraged in the events of the day, and a thrill makes us reflect for a moment. We suddenly notice that life is filled with delights because we've taken our eyes off of ourselves. We feel connected to God and to the life He has given us. We enjoy an unexpected breeze of joy. We are surprised by a moment of serenity and gratitude. Our whole life changes. People will look at us and say, what happened to you? Why are you so happy? Because you've taken your eyes off of happiness and put them on God and on this life and how you can help others. It is an experience of happiness that is not plastic, but it's humble and authentic, a mature contentment. We are satisfied with life because God has given it to us, a reflection of a correct orientation to life. How are we living, and why are we living that way? We did not expect it. In fact, happiness felt like an abandoned pursuit. We have turned away from looking for it and trying to get it, and what happens? It falls. It comes right to us. Yet it comes with the freshness of the morning because we've abandoned the pursuit of it. It breathes into our souls. It declares peace and delight upon us. It crowns with joy an ordinary day when we forget about our well-being and simply live. When you're a grandparent and you see your grandchild with a smile on the face, with their excitement in their life, it brings happiness because you're not looking for it for yourself. You're looking for it within them, and you're reaching out and helping others. And when you do that, you will find true happiness. So So the gift of happiness. And here lies the paradox. Okay? It's never the way we think, right? The aim of its existence can be attained if it ceases to be our aim. So the aim of its existence can be attained when it ceases to be our aim. So it's not our goal. It has to cease being our goal. No one should ever hear us say, I'm not happy today. Nothing is going right. It's just, we're looking in the wrong place. We're not doing the right things. We're putting hope on something that doesn't come by searching for it. We find happiness if we stop searching for it. In Jesus' words, we have life when abundant life is not our objective. When we give, the one who is searching for life loses it. The one who gives his life up, he finds it. Right? Very profound words. We achieve by giving up. We find by looking elsewhere. This elsewhere means we're not looking for happiness. We're looking how we can serve others. We're looking how we can develop the relationship with God. Okay? We're looking for better things. Contentment comes as an unexpected visitor knocking on our hearts, concerned about things other than themselves. When we're not concerned about ourselves, that's when things really change. As an ancient saying expresses, happiness is the absence of striving for happiness. It's not trying to find it, not trying to live for it, but living for things that have value. Efforts to earn and attain are to be replaced by receptivity, by serenely waiting for this dessert of life. It comes to those who are not looking for it. Or as Nathaniel Hawthorne has put it, happiness is a butterfly, which when pursued is always beyond our grasp, but which, if you sit down quietly, may alight upon you. And I think all of us have seen small children chasing the butterflies, and they always fly away. But then you see an older person sitting on a bench or a chair, and the butterfly comes and lands right next to them, or maybe even on their shoulder, because they're not being pursued. That's the way happiness is. Happiness escapes the bent-in logic we live by, as does every good gift God gives. Okay, it's not by our sinful logic. It's not by seeking for ourselves. Satisfaction is not a matter of putting the self in the center of our existence. That's what you and I often do. Okay, our feelings come because we're not getting what we think we should get. We are the center of existence. But this comes from sin. It's what the fallen man has taught us and what we have learned and what we try. Right? That center of existence is the cause of you and I missing happiness. To start with the self is to end with nothing but the self. The self will never be happy. And all you have to do is look at those who are living in the world without God, who may be very wealthy, but they're not happy. May be very famous, but they're not happy. They're always looking for something else. They're never satisfied. Why? Because they're looking for happiness. But when we enter the rhythm of life, the logic of the universe, okay, so here's what happens, right? When we step out of the selfish posture of sin and step into the dance of love, self-giving, joy at the heart of reality, that those are the things that become important. When we dare to live not for our own sake, but for others, like God does, living really for God. when we look at life as a wondrous gift of grace. It's undeserved, unannounced, waiting to be received in humility. Not something that you and I deserve, right? When we live as the loving creatures we were made to be, that's when happiness can arrive as God's gift to crown our holy living with delight. That's why sometimes we can look at someone who's walking close to God, we look at them and we say they're going through all kinds of problems and nothing is going right, and yet we see a smile on their face and they're excited. Why? Because they're not looking for happiness. They're looking to have an effect on the life of other people. And if happiness arrives as a gift, in another great paradox, it can only be kept if it is given back to others. And I like the way this draws to a close. Only by releasing do we hold on to it, all right? Happiness can only be complete when it is given to others. We simply cannot hold on to happiness. We have to give it away before we and others can truly enjoy it. It has to keep growing. It has to keep moving. Our happiness needs to affect others for it to remain. This means that the best way to keep a moment of joy is to share it with someone else. Have you ever had something especially neat happen to you and you're all excited about it? Well, the more you can share with other people, the more the happiness remains, right? And if there's nobody around to share it with, after a while it's just gone. It doesn't have much value. A lonely dive into the sea can be fun for a few moments, but it can be a milestone of celebration if we call friends and spend hours telling jokes, floating around, remembering childhood beach trips, talking about fears, dreams, and nonsense. Why? Because we're sharing it with others. And we want to see that, right? Shared happiness is extended happiness. We will enlarge our joy when we enter it freely received, freely given. Right? As Ralph Sockman said, love, sympathy, appreciation do not exhaust themselves by use. In fact, if they're not used, they come to an end. They are saved by being spent. Human nature cannot be locked up for safe keeping. It can be saved only by spending. If joy arrives to us freely, it will remain on its journey when it is freely distributed. It has to be given to others. Our life is a life of involvement with people, and we always need to be involved in their life also. An open hand cannot hold on to things, but it is the only way of receiving more. So you receive more, and then that more is given. A closed fist neither receives nor keeps. It can only crush. Okay? How can we live then in a way that happiness can surprise us? We look at three things. Which attitude of life excludes happiness and which one invites it? And that's what we're going to be looking at as the weeks go on. What excludes it? What invites it? How does the dynamic of forgetting about happiness and sharing it with others work? And then finally, happiness arrives, as we will see, to those who learn to live beyond the rule of the self, or self-centeredness. And so as we go through this week, let's constantly be thinking, how am I living? What am I living for? Am I living just to be happy? You'll never find it. I'll never find it. We need to be living to serve others, to serve God, to influence and to help our community, our church, our body of Christ, so that we can be encouraged. And as we see others grow, as we're able to help, that will bring happiness. But we don't do it to become happy. We do it because that's the way that you and I should live.